Hello there and welcome to Heart Explained Therapy, and I want to break down a story from Christianity that is very important as a lesson in life for today, and I'm going to break it down to what it means in today's sort of modern perspective. But it's a story about an apostle called Thomas the Doubter. And this was actually mentioned, I come across this with a Terence McKenna video, sadly passed away now, but he's a great speaker, big sort of psychedelic taker, and he took that psychedelic experience, or the hell of a lot of psychedelic experience, and he brought it back and has said some great videos. So if you've not heard of Terence McKenna, get into Terence McKenna because he's a great communicator, articulates very well. And he mentioned this story, and I don't usually dig religious stories. I sometimes hear a few of them and think that there's some great lessons, and my understanding of religion is it's a great sort of myth. If you take the good, positive parts away from it, it can do you good to have a faith in the magical side of religion, but it's not something that I'm a big believer in. But when he said this story, I thought this was very important for the modern day man and woman to understand. And the story about the Thomas the Doubter is that Jesus was crucified and he came back to the other apostles as a vision, and they witnessed this. And they told Thomas the Doubter that they'd seen him and he had missed him. And he said that he didn't believe them, and he said he would only believe them if he can place his hand in the wounds of Jesus, the hands, the feet, the pain that he suffered. If he can place the hand in the wound, and basically Jesus returned to him, allowed him to do this, and obviously he believed when he was able to experience it for himself. And another incredible thing that Jesus says, which I think is crucial, and whether you believe in this story or not, it's not about this story, it's about the story within the illusion, if you like. Jesus says, you didn't believe without the experience, yet others believe without that. Now, I thought that this was very important. It's something that I use as a therapeutical tool, and I didn't realise it was a sort of psychology sort of knowledge that was in a Christianity story, and it's probably more famous, and people who know about religion will know this. But I thought this was incredible because my regular problem with the therapy is that I'm telling somebody a story that they've never experienced for themselves, so they don't believe it to be true. Now, I know certain positive habits, if you pick them up and you take them into your life, or developing awareness of higher knowledge on particular problems where you have what you conceive to have negative sort of problems from. If you learn about this, you gather awareness and you experience a different place. Now, sometimes this awareness can be a very heightened experience of joy and control of emotions, and a sort of psychedelic experience, to use sort of something that Terence McKenna would sort of understand. But also, this story for me highlights how it's not just good enough with words, and often I have said some really good stuff and had a good, in my perspective, I've had a good therapy session, and the person hasn't carried out the actions. They've heard the words and they've nodded and said yes, and they understand it and they really know it. And I know, and I have this bit of a problem that not that I know they're not going to do it, because of course I don't know, but I've passed them the information, I've done everything I can to tell them that this place exists, and they don't go and carry the actions out. And then when they come back in a week or 2 weeks' time, depending on the date of the second or third session, they tell me that they sort of had a half-assed last attempt at the stuff, or they just never had time, and they had all these ego defences why they couldn't do it. And I realised they're getting stuck. They're basically Thomas the Doubter. They have to experience it for themselves, and you can never tell them or push them. And the other spin on the story is some people do believe words is enough, and that can just be as helpful. If you believe in something to exist, then it's more likely you're going to have more opportunity for it. And I think you can connect this to lots of sort of therapeutical tools that therapists use to try and get somebody to act, because that's what you're doing. Somebody comes to you, they're not doing something they should, and you prompt them, you mirror back questions and get them to answer themselves, and it's all this very sort of clever psychological stuff. But you can't be with them 24/7. You can't teach them how to actually do what you say, because you're not in their head, you're not on the end of the phone to them when they're experiencing an event where they could do everything they've learnt and they've understood, but they don't because of fears and phobias and everything else. And I think this story in Christianity highlights this brilliantly. And it doesn't mean that we have to be sad. It doesn't mean that we have to not believe in something because we haven't had an experience. Recently done a podcast with Tim Freak, a sort of philosopher and basically somebody who's wrote lots of books where he studied religion, studied lots of different belief systems, and he's come out at the end of it where he suggests that there's a theme of sort of a natural sort of fabrication of nature, which is just love. And I've got different perspectives and philosophies, but I've also had that experience, so I know it exists. Now, I think that we kind of already know that love and this feeling of feeling good exists. I think it's just that it's so rare, it's so far away most of the time, it's so attached to emotional needs most of the time that we kind of forget about it and we get lost, and the magic dies away until a rare spontaneous eruption of this experience just suddenly occurs. Now, it's very frustrating for a therapist who wants to help people that you say sort of information and no one carries out the actions, but you understand why. They're going through problems, they're having difficulties in their life, and they've not had the experience before in the sense that they've acknowledged it or they've been conscious to it. So again, and I think this comes back to the reason that religion is so important. It's been a long-term humanity sort of ideology for a long time. Now, that's not just coincidence, that's not just everybody's gone completely mad. It's been sort of published into society, and society is us, and we tend to believe what is fed us. And unfortunately, I think we're turning into a world where we see a lot of atheists now, like the likes of Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, who sort of mock and dispute religion very cleverly, very technically, and they highlight all of the religious mistakes. And I think there's actually a lot of good to come from some of the philosophy in religion. I mean, religion is a textbook of philosophy if you can look at it from that perspective. It doesn't mean that you have to believe in symbols and gods and the stories, but some of the lessons from the stories can actually be broken down to be a very important thing in today's modern society. And I think a world where I think there's the likes of Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins have a belief that if all religion was gone, we would have this utopia, we would have this better world and better understanding, and science is sort of better than religion. But I think science is actually just a polarised opposite to religion. I think religion, you have the ability to believe in a sort of magical, mystical mystery that we are. And I think science, you can't do that. You have to measure this magical mystery for it to even exist. And like what that highlights is that science and religion either have to merge into an understanding where both ideologies are accepted. I don't think it's about doing away with one or the other. There is just a history for us to learn from, and a future history that is developing all the time. And we can basically, through your life, if you can take all the positives from every experience, even the negative ones, you twist it into a positive, you'll improve and have the best life you could ever have. If we stretch this over out into the collective humanity, and we take all the good stuff from religion and all the good stuff science brings and all this knowledge and ideology, and we actually see that the myths and the magic isn't so crazy as it seems just because we can't measure it or we can't believe in it or it sounds so insane. We can actually create a better future, which is of course going to be the history that our children's and our generations are going to take on board. And I just thought this is a great story that is so important for you to understand. The belief is important for you to even have a chance of experiencing something. It's very important that you have an open mind, because the other alternative is suffering, or you never accidentally suffering enough to find this great experience, which is where you do not suffer with all the madness that is in the world. And at the moment there's a lot of it, and I hope this has been broken down, and I don't think it's like necessarily the way it's intended. It's just my interpretation of a great Christianity story that I just happened to stumble across, and I think I should have, this sort of stuff needs to be shared. And take away God, take away believing Jesus, take away facts, and just show it for what it is, which is you can have a belief without experience, and both of them are you feeling better with your circumstances. And if that's not a good tool for mental health going forward in the future, then the alternatives are going to be you suffer longer, you're in pain longer, and you're going to find this place and you're not going to be ready for it, and it's probably going to hurt a lot more. So I hope that was explained as well as it could be.